One of the kind of very interesting stories that I see bubbling up right now is the story about whether this is our fault as individuals for making bad choices, or is it the fault of the market that we're being given? And we're working on a new story of stuff called The Story of Change, which is really about the fact that if we're not given good choices in the marketplace, but constantly feel like we're making the best, every time we get on a plane, every time we get in our car, we're causing climate change and we're planet wreckers, then that story becomes we're our own enemy, and we don't know what to do with that story. But the reality that's coming out now is that there are some enemies out there that are not necessarily us. We don't have choices about how to live our lives in a way that can stop the climate change problem. But we can reorient the marketplace to help us do that. We can fight against some of these oil companies who already have enough oil on their carbon on their books that they're planning to burn that's going to take us to 10 degrees Celsius in the future. Those business models are the enemy. If every time we get in the car or go see our grandma, we feel like we are the problem, there's almost nothing to do. But if we can start looking at the factors that are causing climate change and start really using the global marketplace to price carbon or whatever we need to do to attack the problem and encourage solutions, I think we can kind of start building a global movement. But we need a new story with new villains that are not ourselves, because it's not working.
John, who are the villains in the carbon story?
Well, we can go way back to begin to identify that. Now, there was a famous commercial in about 1970, the Crying Indian commercial, which is a famous 30-second spot. People of a certain age are all nodding, I see. And it showed a Native American in his canoe paddling along, pulling the canoe up on a shore that was littered with junk, with smokestacks in the background. And getting out of his canoe, a car drives by and throws a bunch of fast food wrappers and junk at his feet. And the announcer says, people make pollution, people can stop pollution. And what that did, and what I think it ties into what you're saying, that shifted the blame to all of us who throw litter out of our cars. And it ignored this enormous production of carbon, this tremendous consumption of fossil fuel that was happening just off camera that we had just seen. And so, I mean, the individual responsibility is a two-way street. It's a cover. I mean, who is the enemy? I think, you know, it's national and international policymakers, it's national and international legislative bodies. It is certainly large players in the markets, particularly in the fossil fuel markets. I mean, you know, in other movements, if we think of this as a movement, it was easier to identify villains whom you could steer, you could direct, because the atmosphere does not know national boundaries, because the air that I polluted driving here today is going to end up in China. I mean, forget the fact that climate legislation is stalled in the United States legislative system. I mean, Carrie can speak more to this than I can. It seems to me we have this global problem where the enemies are all over the place and not really under the control of any policy body or any regulatory body.